today we're speaking in Russian because we want to share information and all the points we consider very important, so that as many people as possible can understand and get into all the details. That's what we're aiming to achieve. In general, we'll be mixing Ukrainian, Russian, Spanish, and English. Basically, because there are a lot of reasonable people in the world who really need to be brought together, since all the processes happening right now, all the processes that Trump has set in motion at this moment. Everything needs to be united, all the people with common sense. Because what socialist communism has done over the past 100 years is now, you could say, the starting point and what Trump did. He won the election and took office as president in America in January. It's clear that he will push for decommunization everywhere, including in the United States, and he will work to help other countries reset to zero as well. This also applies to Ukraine. Hi, Ira. Hi. So join in, we'll be discussing everything, all the new developments as of today. Of course, if we touch on the negotiations again, it's clear Putin is a KGB man, a scumbag, definitely a scumbag. That is the one who started this war. As for the root causes, we've always discussed that they run pretty deep. So Putin is a puppet. Basically, he wanted this war himself, but he was pushed into it by China, the KGB types, socialists, and globalists as well. And the fact that Trump has now declared war on that devil Soros and his mafia, that will definitely lead, those threads will also lead to Ukraine. Because as of today, you can't exactly call Zelensky one of Soros's people, but it's still one of the globalist threads that influences both Ukraine and all the processes happening right now. Today, it turns out that Trump has to fight in two directions at once. The first is definitely Soros and all that scum, and the other is Putin, the KGB agent behind whom stands China. And all this will need to be put in its place. Hello, Melania. Greetings from Roman Klitschko. This was important, all right? So what I mean is, as of today, if Zelensky still had any conscience left, even just a shred, he would have thrown all that into Soros' swamp and joined Trump's movement. Because what Trump is doing is the best way out for Ukraine. So, since Zelensky is completely immersed in the Soros swamp, of course, it's hard for him to make such a decision right now. Natalia Serdyukova, thank you for the broadcast. Yes, all right, I'm here. So, if Zelensky had put all the pieces together correctly and realized that Trump has completely taken power in Washington and brought order there, he is now close to bringing the Federal Reserve under his control and setting the interest rate at 2%, because he believes, well, the American economy would then start working so powerfully in such a geometric progression that in the future it would also be good for Ukraine. Then, of course, this will lead to Trump influencing the World Bank and the IMF. And, as of today, Ukraine has also been borrowing money at interest, meaning the debts are very large. And we need to understand the situation, what the IMF is, and what this World Bank is all about. We need to figure this out. I'll probably do a separate show about this topic. Hello, Zakarpatia. Thank you for the broadcast. Natalia Serdyukova. Yes, we're in touch. So these shell games with Trump together with Zelensky and what's his name, Sternenko and so on, that's not going to fly. I mean, this might have worked before when there were all those political squabbles in Ukraine, Poroshenko, Timoshenko schemes and so on, and the socialists competing with the Soros-backed crowd over who could get closer to the trough. But now that kind of scenario won't fly. Because for Trump to do business in Ukraine, for this economic alliance with the American-Ukrainian Fund to function and grow, Trump definitely needs political power in Ukraine. And Trump has no intention of sharing that power with either the KGB types or the Soros crowd. That's why this whole dance with the UK and so on, I'm sure, just won't work. Ivan, hello, greetings to Zakarpatia, greetings to everyone. So you need to understand that if you look at the whole picture, for example, the IMF, when it comes to decision-making power in the world, the US currently holds 16%, Japan 6.5%, Germany 5.5%, France 4%, Italy. Why am I giving you these numbers? So that you understand who is actually making the real decisions about how this world is going to live. And it's important to know these global factors. So let's take the UK 4%, India 2%, Russia 2.5%. Then you have the Arab countries at 0.5, 0.4, and Canada 2.3. That's roughly what real power looks like. So how do you see the distribution of power in the IMF in percentage terms? This is the influence over these countries, and the countries that hold the largest share are the ones making the decisions. At the moment, that's the US 16, Japan 6.5, and China 6. And if you ask, where is Ukraine in all this, it turns out that in the IMF, Ukraine is part of a group of 16 countries, with the Netherlands as the main one, which has about 1.8%. And Ukraine holds roughly 0.48% there. So about 0.5%. So that's the kind of political influence we're talking about, just so you understand what kind of political influence Ukraine can have on other countries. So it turns out that, well, the Latin American countries together have about 15%. If you take the entire European Union, together they have about 25%. The United States, 16%. Now, if you take, for example, 1944, when the IMF and the whole system, the World Bank, were founded, at that time the United States controlled almost more than 30%. So it turns out that over all this time, the United States' share in global production, as an economic power, has practically been cut in half. Even if you look at the entire economy that was dominant after 1944, the United States accounted for 50%, and already after 10 or 20 years, it was down to 30 or 35%. And after these presidents, I would even say subpar presidents, Bush, Obama, and Biden, the size and power of the United States has dropped to 16%. And now, if you think about it, why am I bringing up these points? Because right now, if you look at Europe, it holds 25%, and most likely, the socialists specifically came up with the European Union to take a large part of the economy away from the United States of America. And it turns out that America's economic strength declined after it implemented the Marshall Plan for Europe. After that, it dropped from almost 50 to about 30, 35%. And now, from an economic standpoint, America is left with just 16%. This is Trump's goal. Why am I talking about a unipolar world? Trump's goal is to bring those 50% of economic power back to the United States. And he doesn't intend to share with anyone. You have to understand that. And that's why Ukraine needs to act faster. Right away, like Sergey, give it a like. Thank you. Join in. As for participation in the United States, this has been the case since the very beginning of Trump's presidency. I'm sure that the conservatives will never give power back to those socialist Democrats. Why does Trump say America is number one, MAGA, and believe that America should have the number one economy? Because he wants to bring back the greatness that existed before they really started to destroy America. That's why the Marshall Plan kept pulling the economy away from the United States all the time. Then consider all those Kissinger plans that led to China growing so large, and now we're almost having to declare war on those communists with their one-party system, who have created digital slavery at home, and we're planning to do the same in Europe, and also in America through the Social Democrats. That's why the situation looks the way it does now. And taking into account these historical moments, where America was and where it is now, Trump wants to make it so powerful again that communists and socialists will never come back to power, period. And the conservative wing of America will be a reliable ally for Ukraine in the future. Because the fact that Trump is now boosting the American economy will definitely weaken the European Union, and sooner or later it will make China drop to second place. And after that, who knows where they'll end up. Because we know that this communist system, where there's only one party, if you take away their market, which right now is Europe and America, and move all the production here to the United States, then China definitely won't last long. Excuse me, can someone tell me, is it just me, or is the stream frozen? I already hit the like button. It looked like everything's fine on my end. The video is running smoothly, and there don't seem to be any interruptions. Valentina Paspola, the broadcast is working fine. Maybe there's something wrong with your internet? Yeah, thank you. Olga. As for YouTube in the Russian Federation, I didn't quite understand your question. So, taking all this into account, the balance of power and understanding just how strong Trump's authority is right now, and it's only getting stronger because he's still putting pressure on the Fed and will definitely lower the rate to 2%. There's an investigation going on right now. It turns out that one of the IMF executives was actually falsifying documents and providing false information about her real estate. And I think that as soon as she's out of that position, Trump will be able to appoint someone loyal to him, and he'll basically have a majority on the Fed board, and that's exactly where things are heading. This means that in the future, if the Fed starts working in the same direction as Trump, it will definitely have an impact on both the IMF and the World Bank. So, one thing after another will only keep increasing the power in America, specifically for Trump's conservative wing. That's why I'm calling for this, and that's why we named the party the American Party of Ukraine, to emphasize that the future strength of the United States, specifically its conservative wing, is very important for Ukraine. It will help Ukraine choose its own leader in the future and build a real economy in partnership with the United States. Everything's okay, everything's been added, I see. Olga, all right, we're in touch. And we know from the latest information that military ships have now surrounded Venezuela, and I think it will be a week or two. And besides that, this Maduro has been put on a wanted list, and he's been called a terrorist and a drug dealer. He'll get caught in the net anyway. There's a $50 million bounty on his capture. And that means that the change of power won't happen within Venezuela itself, but rather that all the resources will once again fall under the influence of Trump's conservative wing. Accordingly, he can also regulate oil prices. That will have an impact as well. And in general, Latin America is also rising up, thanks to Javier Milei and Bukele. Now, Ecuador has also chosen a leader from the conservative wing, and then Bolivia. There is a struggle going on there as well, with right-wing forces also coming to power. And I'm sure that Trump will help Bolsonaro in Brazil to regain the power that was stolen from him through the elections. And the same thing is happening now. There's an investigation into all these manipulations with the electronic machines that were used, that participated, and were also used in the 2020 elections. That's why I'm sure it will be proven that the elections were rigged. After that, the Democrats will be very close to zero position, meaning they might not even make it to the 2028 elections at all. There will already be a questionable situation before the midterm elections, which, by the way, Trump has already announced. There will be a convention right before the midterm elections. In other words, the Republican Party hasn't done this before. So, from all sides, he's strengthening his position. The fact that he stopped Gennady. Oleg, I can't watch in this format. Can you start it over and speed up the playback? Yeah, I get it. Gennady, I also prefer it when you can change the speed. But I think YouTube will handle it and make it work technologically. And because you can change the speed once the stream is over. I also sometimes wait for the stream to end, and then I watch it. Probably, Maduro will fly to the swamps. They're gathering everyone there. Olga says, well, the swamps, where exactly do you mean? 187. Eliza was talking about those military guys and the criticism that the military TCC is not a guarantee for the authorities if there's a truce. Thank you. Right now, I'm doing a stream in Russian because some friends asked me to share our position on how we see the future of Ukraine. Although we could use a translator, we'll be mixing both English and Spanish. In other words, we need to get our message across about what we want to build in Ukraine so that other countries who also want to free themselves from the Soviet mindset know about it too. So the fact that Trump announced RICO, and you can see behind me it says SOROS RICO, that's because he announced RICO, and the same goes for Zelensky because all these structures are very closely connected. And all these manipulations and slanders that have been going on for the past 30 years with Soros, I think now all of this will be exposed and revealed, and people will see the true face of this devil, both the elder Soros and the younger one, as well as Schwab, the World Economic Forum, and this whole social communist riffraff that wanted to destroy both America and the civilized world. They successfully did this in Europe, and now, for example, they have practically crippled Ukraine, and now Ukraine is in such a difficult situation. They wanted to do the same thing in the United States, but here we have Donald Trump in office, who doesn't let this whole Soros mafia run wild. And now, I'll read this RICO announcement again to explain what it means. This is Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations. It's an American law from 1970 aimed at fighting organized crime. It allows for prosecution not only for individual crimes, but also for participation in criminal organizations engaged in systematic illegal activities, such as extortion, trafficking, drugs, and corruption. RICO provides for severe penalties, including long-term imprisonment, asset forfeiture against the mafia and gangs, and is also used in civil cases to combat corporate fraud. So I think this mafia tangle will keep unraveling, and it will eventually reach Ukraine and European countries, exposing all the socialist setup in Europe. By the way, maybe some people missed it at the beginning, but the European Union, this socialist European Union, was actually created to weaken America, no doubt about it. On one hand, a lot of manufacturing moved to China, but on the other hand, America spent a lot of resources rebuilding the European Union, including, as you know, the Marshall Plan back in 1945. And after that, America lost a lot of its economic power in the world. From 50%, it's now down to 16%. That's basically what Trump is about. He wants to bring that economic strength back up to 50%. I think he'll succeed in doing that. He might not have time to do it himself, but the conservative libertarian wing that has taken power here in the United States will still push things in a way that the American economy will grow very quickly. That's why it's essential for Ukraine to join the United States, because only this economy will work most efficiently, since China, being a one-party system, won't be able to compete for long. After Trump set all these processes in motion here, China will definitely start to lag behind and eventually drop to third or fourth place. And the position of the United States will only continue to strengthen. That's why we're proposing, through tools like the American Party of Ukraine, to also influence the situation in Ukraine in the future in order to choose a true libertarian leader who, in alliance with America, could build the right kind of society. Thank you, Mr. Olsha. Russians also want to hear from you, especially now, when even good VPNs don't help them watch and listen to YouTube. Well, like I said, we're going to combine efforts because we need to bring together people with common sense from all over the CIS and those abroad as well. That's why I think this is the right direction. And someone writes, what about another meeting between Zelensky and Putin? Is it going to be peace through force again? Definitely. Well, in my opinion, neither Putin nor Zelensky will meet separately anymore. But as for Trump sitting them down at the negotiating table, that's a given. I believe that's going to happen. The question is, it might drag on a bit, but we know Trump's intentions. He's already stopped 6 wars, and I think the 7th would be a matter of honor for him. And as a moralist, I'm sure he'll get his way. Friends, please hit the like button. Most people are watching without liking. Valentina. Thank you so much, Valentina. I always support you too. Where do all these so-called experts come from? You mean the ones who promote socialism, support the Democrats, and back the KGB types? Well, there are a lot of them, but our numbers are growing. That's the point. I'm sure that step by step, we'll grow to a significant size and be able to influence the process. Oleg. Hey, Sanders. Oleg, thank you, respect, only liberty. Bogdan Vassisty. Yeah, I support that 100% too. China is no longer just a pawn in England's hands like before. Now you have to take them seriously. Well, yeah, but it was all these politicians who led to this. Kissinger and all those socialist and communist policies in Europe also led to this. And on top of that, they completely destroyed their own European economy, all thanks to the same socialist European Union. And besides that, here the Democrats and socialists have been successfully destroying the United States of America too. But now, since America is becoming strong, you have to stick closer to strength and truth, because we're not suggesting joining the pro-democratic wing, which, by the way, is already dying and Trump is finishing it off. But it's conservative America that's actually building this world. When and how will Ukraine, Donbass, and Crimea return. Maxim Komarev. I'm sure these processes will happen much later, after Ukraine gets back on its feet, the economy rises, there's a free society, freedom of speech, and it thrives because entrepreneurship is supported, the government doesn't interfere in the economy, and especially under security guarantees from the United States. This will give Ukraine the opportunity to become an island of freedom in the Eurasian region in the future.